of approach. But so Kyrene has come up to answer some questions about what they can do. They don't have any direction, so I think the council can talk a little bit about what they can help us understand, some things they've done in other cities, and then understand that the contract for them will be coming back next meeting. I don't think that anyone from their group will be coming back to that meeting, but the way that the mayor and I had talked about this approach the idea would be that once Y2 was hired, there would be a citizen group that would engage with them to basically give approval to the survey as for whatever topic the council wants to discuss, and then it would go out for random selection. And I think so. Kyrene, I guess, explain to us how this all works.
Yeah. Where would you like me? I'm happy to.
It'll pick you up right there.
Okay, great. So a brief overview of our proposed methodology then, I guess. We are a scientific survey company, which means we don't do open access polls or social media banner ads to recruit people to participate. We do statistical random sampling of your residents within the city boundaries, and that's usually address-based sampling. We can go out to our vendors and append email addresses to some portion of those sampled addresses, and we can send postal mailed invitations to ensure maximum coverage so that the sample that we get back reflects the underlying demographic composition of the city as a whole. This is important to us because we want to make sure that decision makers have a tool in their toolkit that provides them with the whole picture of public opinion in the city rather than just the residents that are highly motivated or active in attending meetings or going to open city halls, maybe communicating with each of you. We have pretty strong social science evidence that goes a long ways back that suggests that oftentimes those interests are specifically motivated and different from those of residents as a whole. So our goal is just to make sure that the picture that we're painting through the public opinion research that we provide is as representative as possible. So that is accommodated by, again, scientific sampling, and then we'll field our survey online. Residents will be invited to participate, whether that's through an email invitation or a postal mail invitation. And if they want to take the survey but don't want to take it online or have a harder time and would like someone to administer that to them over the phone, we provide them with a helpline that they can call, and we will have someone administer the survey verbally to them. But fielding the survey primarily online works really well in Utah municipalities, and it helps drive costs down. Telephone survey sampling, especially with the high proportion of households that are cell phone only at this point, is very cost prohibitive in a lot of cases. So we're trying to provide a pathway forward that allows you to gather that public opinion information from a broad base of residents in a way that is hopefully future-proof and somewhat cost-effective. I guess in terms of potential topics, we're open to whatever direction makes sense for the decisions ahead of you. It's good to start off with some things that are fairly high level and general to get people engaged to participate. But if there are hot button issues or topics that are particularly time sensitive, we can accommodate that pretty quickly.
So one of the reasons Y2 was selected, as me and the mayor talked about it, there was another firm that was $600 cheaper, but they were only going to do phone interviews, and it was only 2 questions. And one issue that we felt, or at least that I felt, didn't work well is I think it's important for those people who don't get the survey to see what the questions were, as opposed to trusting that someone on the other end of the phone was asking the question the right way and writing down responses. So, you know, you've all been polled on the phone where someone says, how do you feel about this? And then you verbalize your thing and they take notes, and that's how it happens. This would actually be some open-ended written responses, but maybe some multiple choice or things. The other thing that Y2 offered that others don't was we can have the survey also available for anyone who wants to take it. They wouldn't be part of the random group, But if they want to take the survey and see what it said and provide their feedback, then I think it was $1.50 per response. And so we felt like that was also a value because when they go out and randomly poll people, they're not gonna hit all 20,000 people, and maybe all 20,000 people want to see what the survey said. And so that's kind of a approach that really kind of made Y2 stand out as the type of group that might work well with the city.
Yeah, we want to ensure that no one feels left out or unheard. So after we've completed the statistically sampled fielding of the survey, we can provide an open access link that can then be distributed through social media and things like that. And if residents want to see how their survey responses compare to the city as a whole, once the top line results and report has been delivered, that can be presented as well. So a lot of options for making sure that this is an effective way to gather information and hopefully a communication tool as well, so that once the survey has concluded, people can, again, sort of compare and see how they look when they look at the city as a whole and their own opinions. So I'm happy to answer any questions about process that you might have while we're here, but otherwise that's my spiel.
If you send me an invitation, how do you know whether I answer it once or 10 times or 100 times? Is there a pin or something that?
So the survey platform that we use Qualtrics. It's a great tool for gathering data, and we have the option of ensuring that no contact that we invite to participate accesses the survey multiple times. So if we send an email invitation, then their email is a unique identifier and they can only respond to the survey once. Each email is attached to a unique survey link. But if they receive a postal mail invitation, there's an access code provided and they go through a validation process before they begin with the survey.
Just out of curiosity, having done some statistical work in my past, we've got about 20,000 people in the city. What would be your random sample, what would you guess?
So that depends on response rates largely. A random sample that is viable and has a generally feasible margin of error for a city of this size would be about 400 to 500.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's response rate.
That's completed responses.
That's
400 to 500 people who actually respond.
Yes. So
how many would you send out
sampled. That, like I said, that depends on response rates and how much traction we get from our initial email surge and our initial address-based sampling. We are probably looking at sending about 2,000 to 3,000 invitations, and we expect a 10 to 15% response rate off that initial blast. And then we send subsequent reminders to the emailed participants or invitees. And that usually gets us to around a 18 to 20% response rate. Any other questions?
And so like I said, council, this will come back for the contract approval if the council wants to do it. Obviously, we made it pretty clear in the process that the council has to approve the funding, obviously, right? But as you think about the different topics, several things have come up. Things that aren't necessarily driven by any group in particular, but are kind of hot topics in the city. It could go anywhere from bond issuances to form-based code to the gondola to anything that the city council feels like is important to get the temperature on. This was originally floated as looking at the gondola question, particularly because some of the information that's out there seems to indicate that if we say no, the county will say yes, and how that affects the decision making, or how it should affect the decision making at the city level from the residents' perspective. And I think, and that's the type of stuff that Y2 can help us sort through with more than essentially two open-ended questions. We're hoping that, I think in their RFP they said that we could have up to 50 questions, which is a lot for an online survey, but it allows them to dig into some issues without risk of going over the question limit. It might be a 5 or 10 question survey, but if we needed 50, we have 50.
Yeah, we find that surveys that are sponsored by a city or a school district or some governing body tend to have a little bit more flexibility in the number of questions that we can ask and how long we can keep people engaged. So when it comes to things that directly impact their quality of life, city residents tend to be pretty eager to share their opinions with us. And we find that 12 to 15 minutes isn't too burdensome. Shorter surveys are great for response rates. It's always easier to get more people engaged if we're only taking, less than 10 minutes of their time. But generally speaking, when we have a municipal survey going out that says that this will affect your life and this information will be used in official city deliberations, we get a really good engaged respondent typically.
And so that'll be something to think about for the next week is, are there topics you want to explore, and do you see this as the way to do that? I think from a staff perspective, it'd be helpful to, even if we're not talking big issues, bonding, gondola, or things like that, some cities have just used their services to kind of get a general feedback on how the individual departments in the city are doing and that kind of thing. So, I think there's value, even if the council doesn't have a specific objective for a hard-driven topic. So.
And as John mentioned, we can draft that survey in collaboration with the staff and the council, and then make sure that we have buy-in from citizen groups as well, so that when those results are released and when all is said and done, there's less room to poke holes in some of that methodology, and hopefully it's a process that makes everyone feel included and like they had a voice in it, so that the results are truly representative and useful. So.
And honestly, I can tell you from the staff perspective, I think if the council gives the topic and the citizens help do that engagement on, seeing how it's being prepared and how it's sent out, I don't know why staff would want to be involved. Meaning, we're seeing this as a tool for the council, not as a tool for staff. So, anyways.
All right. If that's all I have for you. So I'm happy to answer any other questions that come up. Feel free to reach out to me through John or visit our website. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for waiting.
Yeah.
Okay, council, next item on the agenda is discussion on the amphitheater and construction. Presenter will be John Conley, our city administrator and attorney.
So, council, as I think most of you are aware, RAMP approved the $312,779 for the completion of the inside of the amphitheater building, or towards the completion. And as part of that commitment to the council, when you approved the application move forward, we've come back to you for direction on what you'd like to see completed in the building. As was identified in November and even the budget beginning last year, the total estimate to complete the inside was $1.1 million. We haven't budgeted that much money, and right now we're in the $600,000-700,000 range, and so essentially the council needs to look at what we want to complete so that we can go out and actually get contractor bids, and then bring those bids back to kind of show from a priority standpoint what the council is recommending. We put together a staff report about some of the things that we're recommending. This list here, and I'll zoom in so that it's easier to see, is essentially there's not a 1, 2, 3, 4 on this list, but this is kind of the order of the staff recommendation for that things be completed. One of those, is getting the ramp logos installed, and then you can see the other things that are the next priorities are plumbing, bathrooms, and lighting, and the fire sprinkler. And so I think once we get past those items, the facility becomes a space that we can hand over a key and someone could use it. A good example is the community band could start holding their practices on the stage instead of at the senior center if they wanted to go there. But there's also, there's a laundry list of items. This isn't the complete list, in the sense that the $700,000 doesn't complete the facility, and
Does
so
$700,000 take care of all this?
it gets close to it.
Well, it says right there above cost totaling 556.
Right. So the hard part is that there's some general conditions, those type of things that add on top of it. And so we've kind of shot for the 556, 550 number so that there's plenty of cushion in there. And
20%.
And the other thing too is, contingency, as well as the original estimate is a year and a half old. And so, and we just wanted as much cushion as we could. And so the idea would be we'd get these bids back, and then we would have a firm number for the council to green light. So, as well as a timeline for when things would start and finish. Yeah. And I'm not sure what other questions you might have for me. The other thing I've added onto this staff report is it shows the funding sources. And one thing that might seem a little confusing is the difference between funding sources through last week and funding sources when we hit July 1, 2019. The difference is that as impact fees for parks come in, then this gray area, which is the amount of money that's been funded out of the capital improvement fund, which was funded by the general fund, reduces incrementally as impact fees come in to pay. So the idea is that with impact fees, you're allowed to pay back expenses you've done for projects that are growth related or expansion type projects. And that's what we're essentially programming the money for out of those park impact fees. And that's, so essentially by the end of fiscal year 2020, there would still be about $410,000 owed to the general fund or the capital improvement fund from park impact fees. So, any questions about that?
This was for discussion only, but my thoughts are everything you had listed there, get it bid out and see where we're at. I mean, you say it's 556, that was last year's numbers, let's see where we're at now. That's my opinion, right? I mean, that gets the building basically life safety ready, right?
And performance. So, yeah, there's, legs and borders for the lights, and it's not, there's some things we left out, like we don't see a need for a grand curtain because we have a roll-up door. I mean, it's things that that people would want, but at this point, in fact, I think this number doesn't include the roll-up doors between the shop space and the stage, because there again, they're not needed. And if you're talking lights and sprinklers, it seems more practical to have those kind of life safety items.
So you can bring it back to us for a vote on later, or what?
Yeah, so if there's something that you would like us to prioritize, it'd be helpful to know that. And then if not, then we will go out to get the firm bids so we know, and as well as a construction timeline.
Right, like I said, I'd bid it all out like that and see what the numbers come in, and then we can eliminate it. We can't afford it.
Okay.
That would be my thought, but.
Any other thoughts from any of the council?
The ramp logos, is that a requirement from the ramp?
So
Big piece of plywood with ramp painted on it, dude.
2 of them for 15 grand, right? Or however many they want. Okay.
I'll donate the
That's an estimate, right? We don't have a firm price on those.
Yeah, essentially it's a metal It's a metal sign that'll be bolted to the building under those pillars, you know, where it kind of arches naturally and fits with the ramp logo motif.
Okay, based on the comments here, then, John, we need to go out for bid.
Okay. Okay, then.
You said color printer, that's all I wanted.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is discussion on Cherry Days. Presenter will be Councilman Bill Swanson.
Council, regarding Cherry Days, we have 3 topics here to talk about. One is, the first one is when seating can be placed for the parade. It has been for the police department and the public works department, Dave can speak about this more, an absolute nightmare. Not only in having to police the chairs and the blankets and the tarps and everything else that gets there, but having to pick them up, and then folks quite upset that their stuff got moved. Other folks quite upset that we saved a spot and we've been sitting in our spot since this morning, and 50 people lined up on the street standing in front of us. It's every year it just seems to get a little bit worse and a little bit worse. So in our Cherry Days meeting, we talked about this, and the recommendation was that we allow people to start saving places for the parade at 6 a.m. the day, is that right? If I remember right, 6 a.m. the day of the parade. No more the night before, overnight, anything like that, 24 hours in advance. I mean, when we moved it to middle of the day, we had people saying, well, I work, so I'm disadvantaged, I can't get there to try to save. And so the recommendation after probably a half hour of discussion was that we just eliminate the saving of spots. And that'll also be important as we look at one of the other subjects here, the next one, the parade route for 2020, because of the construction going on at the main intersection at Washington and 2600. So thoughts about eliminating the seat saving until 6 a.m. the day of the parade?
Most other
That's
cities,
when I go do it.
right, most other cities don't allow you to save early.
Yeah.
So
What's that?
Other cities don't allow you to save it early.
I mean, it's a change from tradition, but as the parade has grown and it's just become more of a headache than I think it's worth, that the committee thought it was worth, and I think it's time to eliminate that. So that's my recommendation, that we move it to 6 a.m. the day of the parade. You can start setting up and go from there.
Council, I'm not, I think it would be helpful. I know a nod helps a lot.
Yes.
But I think some actual feedback, because there will be some major pushback on this. And so I think it's worth making sure that you're all on board. You know, if there's one dissenting vote, then we should thresh out why that's there and see if the council can reach a consensus, because I feel like it'd be helpful for you to all be united
I'm on
on.
board, 6 o'clock, day of the parade.
I'm okay.
Yeah, I feel good about it too.
Same.
I don't go early.
Well, and we'll start trying to let people know, but it'll be helpful because we will get some pushback. And, you know, and it, like you said, it's a change from tradition, so.
You gonna sing for us now?
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
Are we doing Fiddler on the Roof soon? 'Cause
Tevye.
we found Tevye.
Okay, parade route for 2020 because of the road construction.
I got an idea.
Cancel
What's
the
your
parade.
idea first?
Well, we threw around several ideas. One of them was continue essentially staging where we have been, but going up, correct me if I'm wrong, going up to 3100, east on 3100 to 1050, then down 1050, and did we decide on 2600? Coming down 2600? Right, to empty out there at North Ogden Elementary. Stage there by the church on Alberta and 450. But we'd go north to 3100, east on 3100, over to 1050, down 1050 to 2600, 2600 to about 600 east.
Yeah.
Where
Church.
yeah, the church there, where folks can naturally funnel off. We thought about perhaps having the crowds that want to walk down to those that want to come right there to North Ogden Park. At the end of the parade, they can follow the parade down. The floats go left, the people walk right, and you're right there in North Ogden Park.
So when we left from the discussion, we had talked about, the last route we talked about from all the routes we looked at is staging on Mountain Road.
Oh, that's right, that's
By
right.
the equestrian park. So that would be the beginning of the route. It would run
Down
west
2600.
on 2600, and it would either, if you weren't headed up to the park, a lot of our entries end up at the park, and so they could turn up the street. But if you weren't headed that way, you could head out and get out of the city or down, or a different direction. But that was what we ended up
So
with.
many routes that night.
We went through a lot.
And there was
So for me-
also Wadman and Parkhat and the two churches.
Right, for
And we
parking.
would-
And
Also, it was discussed that we would go door to door and let the people know that this was, get their input and the things that we could do to keep residents off their lawns.
well, the door-to-door, we suggested too, the council members do that door-to-door. That we each take a section of that 2600, and we do the door-to-door, letting people know what's going on. We also talked about some seated stands for those that need to sit underneath the trees there in front of the church. They're on 2600 east of 1050, and maybe even a set of stands in the park, the 12-foot or so that we take care of along the north side of Barker Park there, south side of 2600, on either side of the old home there. That we could put some stands there for either disabled seating or elderly, senior seating, so that they're not having to fight. Because a lot of those folks, they have to sit down, they can't stand for the whole parade, but having the bleacher seats would allow them to see over the crowds that are standing and participate. Thoughts?
Council, can I just, the individual who's been involved in helping us coordinate the parade, sent out an email. She wasn't able to attend the meeting where we discussed this, so I told her I would make sure you heard her position. Her preference would be to shorten the route and start up here on 2550 and just continue down Washington, and it would just be a shorter parade route than in the past. Just logistically, for her, it made more sense. So that's.
How would you get, well, I'm thinking about how you'd get the staging on 2550.
Well, 300 east will be good.
So,
Or, anyways, and she wasn't able to write a staff report or anything to kind of help explain that.
I think, well, can I speak?
Yeah.
Because I have talked to her. It sounded like some of the staging, she was saying maybe at the pool for the parade, or for the floats, those kind of things, along 2550. And then I think she also mentioned, instead of stopping at 1900 where we do, maybe even take it to 1700 and then make them disperse along 1700.
I know part of the conversation we had in the meeting was, we've had an issue with floats going down one side of Washington, and the other side of the street is basically, you almost don't feel like you're a part of the parade, because if they're on the west side, you're so far away from the folks on the east side. And if you're on the east side, same for the west side. Where coming down 2600 narrows, makes it easier for Candy to be, and that's the next discussion, Candy to make it into the attendees without, not making it. It also makes it more of a hometown kind of feel, because it's on a narrower street. That was some of the conversation as well. Thoughts?
So we're in the parade in Pleasant View. They're on, they start on Pleasant View Drive. We're around there. It's narrow.
Yeah. The Founders Day?
Yeah, we're in Harrisville too, and they go through a subdivision, so it's.
Yeah.
If your float's split on each side of Washington, I don't think it's an issue.
Yeah, if you put floats on both sides,
Well, yeah, just rotate one on each side.
kind of like
Yeah,
they
stagger
do for the
them.
light parade and all
Yeah,
that.
I mean,
Stagger it.
yeah.
Our comments from what we've seen going along Washington are just the people control is such a huge issue because they try to get closer and closer and
Because
closer.
it's so.
Because the road is so wide. I
Right.
think if it were on a narrower road, you eliminate some of that just by default because they sit at the curb or they sit right near instead of coming out into the road as much.
But then we also have a lot of citizens from other neighboring cities. Can we put them all on 2600 or?
The distance of our current route and the new route that we're discussing from the corner of 2600 Mountain Road to the bottom of 500, is it? It's actually about the same.
Well, right, but I mean, like, they're stacked pretty deep on Washington.
That's
Yeah,
true.
it's commercial property
Right.
versus private.
Private property are stacked.
That is true.
And that's, I mean, one thing that I think the council we would need to, all the effort we've put into gathering blankets the day before would be put into clearly marking property lines the day before so that people don't trample on property they don't own. We actually own 66 feet there. The curbs are not 66 feet away from each other. But there is going to be complaints with that. One thing this year because the road's under construction, we have to do something, and there has long been talk about moving it off Washington to someplace else. So it gives us an opportunity to try something out without it being a permanent decision, and we could just move it back to Washington if it didn't work. But there's a lot of anywhere we move it, there's going to be some headaches that we're going to have to work through, even just like we deal with headaches on Washington. So it's just a different type of headache, right?
I don't know how each of you feel, and I'm hoping you'll share your thoughts, but for me, the feel of the parade changes when we get down off of 450 where the road is narrower, and then we hit Washington. It changes completely. The pace changes, the involvement with the crowd changes. You feel much more distant from the crowd as soon as you cross 2600 and you're out of that narrower area. I mean, I like the closeness of the upper portion more than I like the distance of the bottom, but there's pros and cons to both.
One thing, there is a lot of commercial on the current route. We looked at parking was a big issue for the 2600 route. And the city has a lot of city-owned parking locations that are pretty close to that route. So if we go and we work backwards from the end of the route, there's North Ogden Park. It's 500 feet or 1 block from the parade route right there. And a lot of people will end up there anyway. City Hall's parking lot is on the parade route. The Senior Center parking lot is 1 block away from the parade route. Wadman Park is between 300 and 800 feet, depending where you're at in that parking lot, so 1 block away from the parade route. The Barker Park parking lot is 3 blocks away from the parade route, and Oaklawn Park parking lot is also 3 blocks away from the parade route. So considering walking distance, we figured for this route here, there was a lot of city-owned parking that would be available that we could, if this route's chosen, we could help advertise that for people who are coming to watch the parade.
And we're optimistic based on the discussions related to the amphitheater and the event last year. If it's a non-paid event, the church that the churches along the corridor are willing to work with the city on parking.
Along with that, if the church did allow us to use those 2 parking lots, we had talked about having a designated disabled parking area on the east side of the church down at 700 East, the old Stake Center there. So general parking in all of the lot except for that piece that's on the east from that back sidewalk forward. That would be, and then we could have some grandstands that are set up there for those that. In an area reserved for those that are going to be in wheelchairs or whatever, and we don't want people standing in front of them.
So Tiffany, what was the parade route you were just talking about with parking?
The parking went from the equestrian park, so staging could be along Mountain Road from 2600 to 2750 right there, that stretch of road, or even if needed from south of 2600 along Mountain Road for the floats and the entries, and they would converge together at 2600 and head east until 550,
Keep going.
it's not 550,
Right about
500, right there. And then they could go up and into the park. We usually end up, like, the Wienermobile is a great example. A lot of the antique cars that are at the front of the parade, they end up having to find a way to get from the bottom of the route back up to North Ogden Park through neighborhoods to get there for the car show.
Many,
or for other
many moons
events.
ago, we used to have, for us old timers, we used to, this parade staged at, Kurt's, and headed north, and then that part, I think that's, I always think it sucks that we're taking people out of the town anyway. So I like heading towards it, so I like
Headed
heading to the
north.
park anyway.
Interesting.
We do, on the current route, we have, I don't think they're difficult to obtain.
You know,
There's
that's our,
just a-
that's a city street, so we control that street.
Mhm.
Only if Dave and the police chief say you can.
Sit with the fire marshal.
Oh, I can get around.
Thoughts?
I like that,
I like
I like that
2600.
last recommendation.
The 2600?
Originating from up by the equestrian park and
And then coming
south or west on 2600.
And where were we gonna do the kids parade? I mean, that was part of the discussion too, right?
It's in the dark,
I
Start
think
at
we
Fruitland
should.
Drive.
to 500,
Fruitland Drive on down, or?
Was
Yeah,
it?
at least come up that hill,
or maybe it was
come
the
down past 1050 before you
Campbell's right
start.
there where the barn is.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
To be honest, I don't remember. I would have to go back
I don't
and look
think
at
we
my
ever
notes.
kind of came up with a definite on that, but
Right.
just we're concerned about keeping those kids off the hill.
Yeah, somewhere where we could start with a parking lot would be ideal to keep the kids in for
Do
safety
Wadman Park
reasons.
and have them
Yeah, you
get-
could start at Wadman Park and they could come down that hill, head that way, or,
Well, I mean, you could have them, they could park at Wadman Park and get at the corner of Wadman Park.
You can get the weeble
I mean,
wobbles.
Yeah,
They might be too fast, and then they.
or, you know, possibly at one of the church houses, or, you know, any of
I
those
think
park
just-
locations, parking lot locations that I mentioned might be a good place.
Yeah, bring them down past the, at least by the white church, bring them off that hill, because you can get moving pretty fast.
Coming down the hill.
Yeah.
Start
Yeah,
at
I
the
don't
Red
think
Brick
we-
Church on the east side and go to the west side.
Take off all their brakes.
You see them go around the church.
exactly. Go around to church.
No, we didn't.
We didn't come
pick
up
a-
with one, yeah,
But part of the reason we want the council to make a decision on this sooner than later is so it can be advertised for next year. So that as people attend the event this year, we can have big signs that say, hey, the parade route is this next year. Get, you know, plan now. Save your spots now.
The day of at 6
Put your
a.m.
markers out now.
Do we have consensus then?
I don't know, if around the table, where do you wanna go?
I'm a big fan of the 2600.
I'm fine with that.
I'm fine with it as well.
Sure, let's try something new.
Okay.
I
Yes.
won't be here on the 4th this year.
Okay, the consensus
That is
is
it for next
2600.
And the change in seating will take place this year, saving seating. That won't wait till next year, that'll actually happen this year. And then the last topic is the throwing of candy. It's the annual discussion. We've thrown candy forever. There's always concerns about safety. Your thoughts? Do we keep it? Do we keep doing it? Do we eliminate it?
Can we stop it?
No.
That was the next question.
I'm fine with it.
We've only had, what, 2 kids injured in the whole state? Ever?
I'm fine with it. I mean,
Okay.
I like it.
Yeah, sure.
I think it.
Cheryl?
It would sure simplify things if we didn't, but
That leads to
whatever.
Mayor's question,
But
can we
I don't-
stop it?
Probably not,
It'll happen anyway.
yeah,
Mhm.
so,
Don't throw them
Just-
suckers, don't
right.
throw them great big suckers, you know. Tootsie Roll Pop, because they hit you in the head and they hurt.
From our standpoint, do you still, right now, the current guidelines for candy are to have walkers along the side in each of the entries. Would you like to continue that?
So what
Yes.
I found works in Roy, I've been to their parade, they throw so much candy that kids just stop picking it up. And
You have to bring 10 pounds of candy.
everyone throws so, by the end of the, yeah.
Then you,
There's candy just all over the street and they have to come and
The
scoop it
road's
up.
not as, we actually, at Harrisville, we did that too. We had our kids and there was
Yeah,
so much
yeah,
candy.
exactly. So
Okay,
we just gotta get
The
ready to
road's
throw a
not
lot
as
of
wide.
candy and
Do
then
they-
problem
Better
solved.
Do they need walkers? No.
Thanks, council members.
thank you. Item 8, any public comment?
Regarding what?
anyway,
Anything?
That was pretty open-ended, maybe.
Okay, I stand out of conscience.
Name and address, please.
Certainly, I apologize. Janice Christensen, 1233 East, 2250. I generally have respected each one of you. Now, they had interactions with you and appreciated working with you. But I want you to know, I stand in shock and embarrassment as you continue to discuss the progress on the amphitheater, such as the practice of the band all summer long. I ask each one of you, and you can look me in the eye, I ask each one of you, which one of you lives 300 feet from that amphitheater, which is the largest, one of the largest in the area? I think it's easy for people to make decisions about other people's areas and their lives. And I feel, unfortunately, that is what's happened. I think you have been tricked and mesmerized by college degrees, impressive status, and I think you have contributed to a very bad decision. And it's going forward, and it will affect the people in that area tremendously. It will destroy their little neighborhood. I'm just a mom, a grandma, but when I visit that neighborhood, I know what a horrible mistake that was. And when outsiders come, they stand in awe that that was ever built in that quiet little neighborhood. The neighborhood meeting city codes. Now, if I understand correctly, you've changed the sound ordinance to accommodate the needs of the amphitheater. And yet, the neighborhood cannot use that same sound degree. Only the amphitheater. It seems so distorted and so confused. And like I say, I know you guys and I respect you, but I do not know how in conscience you can proceed, flip with, well, this band will do there and this will be there. Really, do you know what you're doing to that neighborhood? As I say, I'm embarrassed and I am shocked that such good people could be lacking in such conscience when it comes to other people's lives, property values, and everything. I think you're good. I think you were tricked. I think you were led down the wrong path. And I hope you will find ways to temper what happens in that amphitheater for the sake of the community. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Any other comments from the group? Seeing none, we'll move to council, staff, mayor comments. Tiffany?
Just that I will be bringing back, I don't have it ready yet, but I would like to take a look again at the fees for field reservations for the city, at the method we're using to reserve fields for organizations. As we transition from AYSO to SWAT for recreational soccer, I think there's an opportunity to tighten up how we reserve fields, and so.
Just fields, not the balconies or?
No, this is just the field space that's used, and it's come about because of some conflict we've had with some residents who have reserved fields who are calling me, worried about organizations running over top of their field reservations. And so we've brainstormed in our office, and I think there's some ways we can tighten that up. So I'll be bringing it back to you here in the next little bit.
Dave? No, sir. Blaine? Well, I'm just curious, has the sound decibel changed from what was agreed upon?
It's the same ordinance that was passed, but I think there are some accommodations for performances a little later than the noise ordinance, but I'll have to pull it up and see.
Okay.
I don't remember the specifics, and I'd hate to.
I don't think so.
I was gonna say, I haven't heard anything, I was
It
just,
didn't go beyond what that's always been for residents at night, sometimes.
I just wanted to
Look it up.
I'll bring back some information or email you.
I don't have anything else, Mayor, thanks.
Carl?
So last Monday, I think I told you before that the Weaver Mosquito Abatement Board, our director resigned, got a new job, and last Monday we met and we appointed a new director of the Weaver Mosquito Abatement Board, which we all paid into as taxpayers. So his name is Keith Hill. We put out an RFP nationwide and had actually 8 people apply. 3 of them were local, and we narrowed them down to 4. 3 of them were local. 1 of them was out of state. Several of us on the board interviewed, and Keith actually has worked for the Weaver Mosquito Abatement Board. He was just amazing how during the interview he just shined above everybody else. So, and then also we as a district, we've owned our own plane to do our service, but the plane has got out of, needed some major repairs. And so now we're contracting to do our spraying. We actually sold the plane for, we were told originally it was only worth $36,000, but Keith had it appraised at 120, and we sold it for 125. So we actually made a little more money. So, and it's going to actually be financially better to contract it out. Happens to be because the contractor can do different type of spraying and spray more than what we're able to do with our own plane. So good things are happening to the mosquito abatement board right now. That's it.
Okay. Phil?
No.
Ryan? Joe?
No.
Annette?
Yes, council, I need to know who is going to Utah League, April 23rd through the 26th. I've got your hotel reservations because I had to get them, or you wouldn't be close enough. So you're going to let me know, right? I need to get your reservations done next week, so please let me know by Monday. That's all I have.
Okay.
So just real quick, it's April 23rd to the 26th. I thought it was 24th.
It's the 23rd.
Okay.
They hadn't got their stuff together, and I'll send all that information to you. Why that is the way it is.
Thank you.
Okay, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Move to second that we adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you for your participation.